For this episode of Off Color, City Council's Streets Edition, I followed a piece of legislation from me complaining about it on Facebook to sending an email to not only my city council person, but to all of city council. What kind of legislation would make a woman do that, you may be asking? The kind of legislation that has racism at its core. It puts the racist core in decorum. The legislation also dealt with, should public comments be 30 minutes every Monday and televised? City Council President Jolon Clark had no interest in having it be televised, and Chris Herndon of Stapleton, aka the neighborhood named after a Klansman, also agreed that he didn't want anything televised because what if someone put it on the internet and someone saw it? They don't want you to hear comments from regular commentators
here and
like
express
this.
The fact that we felt like we were being silenced or that there was some fascism going on within the Denver City Council. So to hear that Cashman has put this proposal forward.
Or this.
Had a workshop of how to listen and pay attention, even if when you ain't paying attention, at least you look like you paying attention.
Oh, Chairman Sekou.
And we've seen that rule be violated.
What he's referring to is people's lackadaisical looks during public comment. I've seen it with my own eyes, okay? So that's all I have to say about that.
Of what's happening.
So my homegirl, Candy C. DeBaca, did not come to play at this city council meeting. Well, she came to play her PowerPoint, that's for sure.
Our next proposal is from Councilwoman Seda Baca, and she has a PowerPoint.
I'm going to explain to you why I think it's important for us to address this. Also, thank you to Councilman Herndon last night for acknowledging that we're in Black History Month, because a lot of the reason I think we need to change our decorum is really rooted in history and systemic oppression and the way that these structures, especially government structures, were built around and to uphold white supremacy and patriarchy. So
I'm so sorry to interrupt the great Candy C. DeBaca, but I must say that my beef with Chris Herndon is in direct relation to not him voting to keep the name of Ku Klux Klan member Ben Stapleton on our neighborhood, okay?
Most of you all haven't been able to dive into anti-oppression work or anti-racism work the way that I have. And so a lot of us throw around terms like inclusion and diversity without really understanding what they mean or to what level we're talking about changing systemic structures.
Okay, so actually she goes on for like a long time and all of it is amazing. So we're going to throw that up on the podcast. So make sure you subscribe to Off Color wherever you get your podcast from. Chris Herndon, my city council person, feels disrespected by Candy C. DeBaca, and he has disrespected a whole community of people by advocating for a Ku Klux Klansman's name to remain as the branding for the neighborhood where we live, where Christopher Herndon and I live. It's an old decommissioned airport named after a Klansman. We voted to change the name of the neighborhood, and he told everyone he had not experienced racism in Stapleton, and he didn't see it as a problem. So I don't know what kind of anti-racist work Chris Herndon is doing, but he does not represent my kind of anti-racism work. I did not start paying good attention to local politics until I started working on my documentary, Running with My Girls. And now I pay a lot of attention. And you know what? They don't like it when you pay attention. They want to write you off as a crazy person, as a rabble rouser. But you know what? We deserve to have our voices heard. So please call your city council person and let them know that you would like to see televised public comments and an increase in the frequency of public comment. Okay, they all need to review the PowerPoint because nobody is understanding anything, apparently.
Equitable access to voices, particularly those who have been disenfranchised, right? Think extra about the accessibility for a person with a language barrier, or we need to think extra about a community that
You can't just go around dropping words like equity and disenfranchised if you don't really know what they mean.
An up and down vote so I can see if it's worth it to even pursue anti-racist policy here.
I think it's very
There's
worth
no way
it.
for me to, there's no way for me to say yes, but not yet in an up or down vote. So that's good. So that's the
I'll
feedback
make
I
the
would give you.
motion.
I think we can get there.
The point of this is I want to let people know that your voice does matter, because when I contacted City Council the first time about this, they said, no, we all love it, including Debbie Ortega, just that this is fine. And you know what? It's not fine for some people. It's not fine to have fascism at City Council. And I don't think that we should be having to jump through hoops to get public commentary out to the public.
Our Constitution protects civil disobedience. We have a right to speak. This is the people's house. Do you want this to be fascism, or do you want this to be a democracy?
I realize that was a lot of personal commentary, so I'm just going to put up a few little audio clips so you can hear things that I didn't like without my commentary.
Thanks. Regarding televising, I'm still trying to process how I feel about that, because there's one incident during the entire time that we've had this that troubled me, and it was a political stunt.
Yes. I am a huge fan and proponent of public access television, and there are lots of opportunities where someone who wants to communicate with the broader community can get that microphone and do that. I don't believe that this is that, and I do believe that it will detract from that. I think that when all of a sudden people are coming because they are speaking to an audience and they're not speaking to us, it will be different. And so I don't believe that there is value in adding this as a televised portion that already, but there are people who want to talk to us and maybe don't want that as a clip that someone can then post on social media to disagree with them or bully them. And again, I think that it will lead to more people who are addressing a broader audience through this vehicle when there are other vehicles to get there, and it will take away from creating that more intimate space where we can have people talking to us. And so for that reason, I am opposed to us televising this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll applaud President Clark for the television piece, because I certainly agree with that. And I'm not a voting member. I do think we should be just cognizant that there will probably be some theatrics that are going to occur. But
Big concerns about being televised and people abusing that privilege. You use the word theatrics, so we'll wait and see how that goes.
Right? And by striking the original F in place of the new F, that there's nothing about people with disabilities. So suddenly, respectful of diverse opinions could include disability, but the new F says, I don't care about people with disabilities. So
Voting on the second proposal to televise. Okay. And it was
Moved.
okay, moved and seconded. Okay. And so then let's do roll call.
Councilwoman Kinich?
No.
Hines?
Yes.
Sedabaka?
Yes.
Clark?
No.
Black?
No.
Motion fails.
So now can we?
Is respectful of diverse opinions. So it calls for a civility that is respectful.
And I would encourage you to hear from a woman of color telling a white male that I'm challenging that language because of the embedded patriarchy and white supremacy in it. And so that's the point of adding that on there. And so I would propose merging them. That's fine, but with the understanding that civility and respect are defined differently across groups.
Position has not changed on the word impugn. So 12.2F, I still cannot support. But on 12.1F.
Real quick, can you propose a word that would be more satisfactory?
I believe impugn is the exact right word. In my opinion, this is a non-compromise. I don't think on the floor you attack the motives or the truthfulness of your colleagues on the floor. I think that the floor is a place that, because of all these things we're talking about in terms of intent and respect, that is not a respectful place or space. If you want to come up with a council member afterwards and say, I feel like you were untruthful, if you want to throw them under the bus in the media, nothing can stop you from that. But this is the right rule, in my opinion, as written, and I will continue to support it. So I think I gave some pretty lengthy comments about this on the floor, so I don't want to take up our time, which is short. But I think the rule as stands is the rule that I believe in a democracy.
Would you pick for me the definition that you feel is most appropriate for impugn? So that we can define that when we define, because if we're simply disagreeing on the definition of the word, then perhaps defining it the way we would like to use it along with anti-racism makes sense, so that I'm not feeling like censorship can happen for calling into question something when you're taking it to be more specific. And because I recall you mentioning personal attacks on character when you discussed what it meant to you on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can discuss as a body whether we're going to add definitions. I'm comfortable as is. So again, I hear you that you're asking for a proposal, and I'm simply not offering one. So if you are passionate about it, we can certainly talk more, but I do not think it's broken. So I am not proposing, and I'm going to stick with the fact that I think it's fine the way it's written. But I respect and would be happy to respond to proposals if you desire a definition and you want to propose one. But I don't believe one's needed. So I'm just not proposing anything to change that. So I did just want to go back real quick to 12.1F. I'm sensitive to the time, Madam Chair, and to the sponsor. I just don't want to, I know we're running low on time, so sorry to go so fast. On 12.1F, I believe that we should keep the existing sentiment, but I take your feedback on the words. So to me, maybe the word here is to develop a respectful atmosphere, right? Since the word respect is one that's perhaps better than civility. So to me, developing a respectful atmosphere is an intent of these rules. And then I think in terms of the second half of the statement and the proposal, I think this is really important work. And I will say that it's a little difficult to be told what work people at the table have and haven't done. I respect the work you've done, but you may not know the work that the individuals at the table have done. So, and I think this is the work of our council. I think this is the work of our legislation. I think it's the work of our departments. So to me, it almost feels like the wrong place to start this conversation in the rules of decorum. Doesn't mean that we couldn't somehow get to the right sentiment. In particular, the way I struggle with this is that, the word challenging the norms. I mean, by definition, we've had a conversation about First Amendment from our speakers. And in a First Amendment environment, it's very difficult for me to not challenge, right, what someone says if I think it is racist. I have this challenge at public meetings all the time where I believe that our participants are there and they may be expressing a racist sentiment about who should not live next door to them or who should not have the right to be in their neighborhood. And it's very racist, and it's my job to find this way of how do I challenge that at the same time respecting their free speech. And so in the rules of decorum, I think it's the most difficult place to challenge the racism of a speaker. That literally becomes a First Amendment issue. It literally becomes the legal challenge that speakers have talked about. So to me, that's the part of this that makes it hard to fit in the rules of decorum, while at the same time believing that the culture shift that you're calling for is critical. So to me, this one, I might want some more time to think about wording, but I was playing in my head with, is it about developing a respectful atmosphere that promotes, equal access or equitable access to voices, particularly those who have been disenfranchised, right? So that we have to think extra about the accessibility for a person with a disability or a barrier. We need to think extra about the accessibility for a person with a language barrier. Or we need to think extra about a community that sometimes doesn't make it down to council because of their other barriers. So I think it's appropriate to be thinking extra. I just am not sure with the First Amendment context that challenging speakers is the way that that happens. So I was thinking about those words to really get at the intent here of saying this is the intent of our decorum is to be respectful and to be promoting and actively doing something to promote an anti-racist culture, but one that's broader, as Councilman Hines said, than just that form of oppression. So anyway, that would take some time to do, but I think that this is a really important conversation for all of our work, right? So it's not about just these rules of decorum. I think it's an important conversation for all the work that we do, so thanks.
We have.
A few of them give me pause, particularly this one. The idea of taking out civility and respect is not what I want.
You missed the part where we're adding that. We're adding it. I've agreed to add it.
I understand that, but I also think too that when I look at the addition, the racial equality of challenging norms, patterns, traditions, structures, institutions, I look at this body, like the 13 of us, and I don't think we are doing anything that creates an anti-racist culture. Because as a black man that's been on council now for my 3rd term, that's something that I fought really hard for. And so I would like for us to have a broader discussion about, do we feel that that's the case? I mean, not challenging, because this is the intent of these rules. Not how we feel as an overall body. We're talking about decorum in the chambers. And I just would like to have a broader discussion about this. So that's why I'm not saying I disagree, but just 35-minute conversation that we're now going to move to the full body when we're still missing a couple members of council. I'm trying to understand this rush. And so that's why I'm trying to look at what are we trying to, and we talk about respect right now. As a black man, I'm just trying to give my opinion and I hear chuckles from people. But if I return
I'm actually laughing because rush.
This is my point, is that I'm just trying to finish my statement that we can have a conversation as a larger audience. And this is just the one of many that I would like to have a broader discussion about. But I'm not a voting member, so if we move it, I'll make my comments on the floor. I just seem as if this, to me, I think needs more baking. And I really want to applaud Councilwoman Kinich for your comment. I feel like it second a lot of what she said.